Welcome to Two Gay Peas in a Podcast.
I'm Bevan.
And I'm Matt. Now, this week, Bev, we're going to deep dive into relationships.
We're going to really deep dive.
We are. Now, you should know by now if you listen to us, but we are married. Bevan and I, we are a couple. We've been together for going on 5 years. And every relationship comes with its challenges. I mean, in the beginning, you and I, especially me, I know I struggled a lot with us having an age gap.
Yes, you did.
That was just one of the elements of a new relationship that I struggled with.
It was definitely one of those. And obviously in the beginning of the relationship, things sometimes a little bit easier, but we started on the foot with something that was obviously seen as in society as a little bit of a taboo.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit. So we started behind the eight ball a little bit.
What was that?
Of the age gap.
Oh, yeah, the age gap. Yeah. I thought you were talking about something else.
Oh, being gay.
Being gay. That's what it was.
Is that a taboo?
Ah, shit.
No. But yeah, we started obviously behind the eight ball a little bit about that. But as we know, as relationships go, we've started from day dot knowing that it was pretty amazing, pretty special.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to continue that, we've wanted to be really committed to our relationship, whatever that shape, form happens.
Yep. And sometimes communication is a real struggle. Sometimes it's really hard to even just process what's going on in your head in terms of the pictures that you see and how you can communicate those verbally to your partner, right? I know in the past I have just completely shut down without any way of communicating what I'm thinking, and then nothing goes anywhere.
Yeah. It's like the lights weren't even on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. So this year, you and I have done a lot. I mean, we've moved to Melbourne, and one thing we did after we got to Melbourne was we did some therapy.
We certainly did.
Yeah. Now, with us today is a psychosexual therapist and counsellor based at Sex Life Therapy here in Naarm, Melbourne, Ashley Macklin. We worked with him. Hello, Ashley.
Hey, Ashley.
Hello, boys. How's it going?
Really good. Thank you so much for joining us, Ash.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Now, we really enjoyed the sessions that we did with you, and we will potentially do more with you. I'm sure we will.
I'm sure
we would love to explore all facets of our relationship really deeply. Why don't you kick us off by telling us what psychosexual therapy is?
Sure. So psychosexual therapy is a branch of counselling therapy, not to be confused with a psychologist. It is mainly around talk therapy that's around the topics of sex, relationships, dysfunctions. So when I say dysfunction, I mean like an issue that could be barring from having happy and healthy sexual relationships. So most people, when they think of sexual dysfunctions, could think like erectile dysfunction. Mm-hmm. To become a psychosexual therapist, I went through an undergrad in psychology. I went through a master's of counselling, and then I went to the only psychosexual therapy postgrad in the country, which is at the University of Sydney. Not to be confused with the sexology degree, which is at Perth University, Curtin. Hope that answers that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Ash, before we get into anything too deeply, I'd be curious as to why you chose that path. You know, what led you down that path of psychosexual therapy?
Yeah, it wasn't like you just woke up one day and went, hey, I want to do this.
Yeah.
Well, kind of a little bit, but also a little bit not. I always thought the topic of sex was fascinating. Talking about it, even when I wasn't having it, like, not when it was about me sort of thing. But I grew up in East Victoria in a reasonably country area. Like I had cows, I had chickens, things like that. So the idea of talking about sex outside of, your intimate partner just wasn't really a thing. And I generally believed this until I ended up moving to the city. I wanted to start studying, and I was probably late to the game. I wanted to become a psychologist. I started studying when I was about 26. And then over time, I was like, holy crap, I can't believe it. There is actually a job where I can talk to people about sex and relationships and get paid for it. This is fantastic. So, look, it's always something that I've been interested in doing, but I didn't think that there was a specific role for it.
I think it's a fantastic role. It's an amazing thing because, we're brought up to not talk about sex, that it's shameful, that it's something you do behind the closed door with the lights off under the sheets or whatever,
Yes.
whatever.
If you're lucky, you get your year 7 lesson on sex.
I know, right? Yeah.
That's about it in high school. That's where I was. Yeah,
It's very minimal.
Mice and men.
You don't talk about it.
Yeah. And I really relate to the fact, growing up in like country Victoria for me, there wasn't, obviously sex was just left for the mystery of relationships for you to work out, possibly behind the shelter sheds.
Yeah.
And that was about it.
But working it out in quiet, though, you can make so many mistakes. Why shouldn't we talk about it really openly?
Yeah, exactly.
At our core, we're animals, right?
Yeah.
It's a primal part of us.
It's true. But it's never been reserved for the dinner table.
Yeah.
Although it does obviously come down to cultural stuff. I mean, we're all very much white Australians here, and there is obviously the cultural upbringing of that. Other countries are either going to be a lot more conservative or even less conservative when it comes to discussing these things. There are whole cultures out there that we, in the Western context, don't really even know much about, but they become infinitely more what we would probably consider deviant by most sort of aspects. So, for example, there in Africa, there's some tribes that have more of a matriarchal role. So there will be women with multiple male partners, and that's actually, they're all happy with that compared to, I guess, more patriarchal society, which even now, most of the Western sort of stuff where it would be 1v1.
Yeah. There are other examples in nature too. I remember an old friend of mine years ago who was a real nature expert. It first taught me about little blue wrens, and he told me that the little blue wrens often have 7 little lady fairy wrens on the go at any given time. I mean, that's just normal. That's just how they work. Ash, yeah, right.
Animal sex is actually incredibly interesting. There are certain fish and bird species which will actually pretend, like the males would pretend to be female to get closer to other mates, so that way the bigger male mates won't like attack them and scare them off.
Oh, so that they can kind of swoop in and take the ladybirds.
Pretty much. So there are some creatures which will actually, while the I don't like using these terms, but I'm using it for brevity. The alpha males will be fighting each other, and then what would be considered a beta male would swoop in, impregnate the one that they're fighting over, and then it'll just rack off.
Wow. That's incredible. Ash, one thing that we dived into in our therapy session with you gave us some homework, which really opened up a whole new communication channel between Bevan and I.
Was that a surprise to you we got homework?
What's that?
Was that a surprise to you we got homework?
Homework on...
Yeah, from a therapist.
Or maybe, yeah.
I was like... this is hardcore. We got homework.
I love assigning homework, but I often find that when I assign it homework, people tend not to do it. So I've been scratching my head trying to find different ways to label it so people would actually be interested in doing it. Still people will come in and be like, oh, no, I didn't do any of the stuff that we agreed and discussed. Okay. You're not going to get a failing grade for this.
Yeah, but they will be failing within themselves, though. They won't be getting the most out of the work.
The Virgo in me was like, no, I'm doing the homework. We've got to do it.
But one thing we did explore with you, Ash, was the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Now, this is only the start of the, hopefully ongoing work that we do to dive deeper into our relationship. But why don't you tell us about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, what it is?
Yeah, sure. So the 4 horsemen of the relationship apocalypse, not to be confused with the biblical one.
Yes, the
end of the world, bitch.
It was invented by a therapist named John Gottman. He's a relationship therapist. He invented this probably about 40 years ago. But the concept was 4 different issues that come up in relationships that spell doom. And once you start looking at about how often these might come up, you can then start to notice when you're doing them, and then do what's referred to as the antidote. I don't know why the opposite of a horseman is an antidote, but that's the wording he went for.
Right, yeah.
So when it comes down to it, the first one is criticism. I think we all understand what criticism is, but it's overall the way that it's conceptualized is attacks on the character as opposed to the behavior. This is obviously very different from, say, making a complaint. It's like, you doing this caused me a lot of issues. It's like, you're a terrible person. You've done this to me. And obviously it does not come across as very good from the other person.
Mm-hmm. Attacking the character.
Yeah. Attacking the person who that they are as opposed to the behavior that you would want to change.
Yeah.
The antidote for that one is starting with I statements. How I have been affected by this behavior in this particular way. And then you can express maybe a positive need, something that you would like them to do instead, which would obviously be a lot better way instead of just telling someone that they're terrible and then expecting them to change without any sort of guidance.
Yeah.
The second one is contempt. Now, contempt, without trying to mince words, it's actually the worst one out of all four of them. They've done studies on this, and I believe the statistics are that if your relationship has contempt, it has a 90% chance of ending in the near future.
Wow.
Now, contempt is, as I said, the single greatest predictor of divorce, and contempt is attacking the other person with some very derogatory terms. So if you are flat out calling your partner terrible names, that's no longer even about their character. It's just you are attacking them, saying that they are a terrible person. This is obviously something that is it's a belief inside of ourselves that there is something wrong with them and we do not like them. When it comes down to it, contempt is I don't like you. The way that we have an antidote for this is showing appreciation. So express the positive things that you like about the other person. Cultivate this culture of appreciation for your partner and express gratitude for the things that they do that you really like, instead of just sitting there in the distaste for each other.
I think when we were talking about this, we were just really surprised because we were being really honest and say that we've never done that to each other. And I was really, I can totally understand that if you're at that point in your relationship where you are doing that, I would understand the stats that you're pretty well about to end.
Yeah.
That's pretty severe.
Need to do some serious work right then and there to get things back on track.
Yep. Because you've just lost, Sorry, go for it, Ash.
No, that's okay. I was going to say that oftentimes by the time that a relationship gets to contempt and they do try to come in to save the relationship, a lot of the times it can be too late. At least one person has already checked out of the relationship and has no interest on trying to rebuild it. And so contempt is incredibly toxic, and you do need to start addressing relationships before it gets to contempt. It's like, I suppose it's the equivalent of death out of the biblical ones.
Yeah. So there are two more.
So we've covered criticism, contempt. The third one is defensiveness. So defensiveness is attacking back, usually in response to perceived criticism. So in that sense, we look for excuses and often portray ourselves as the victim, as victimized by our partner, hoping that they will back off by saying that, what they're doing is hurting us in a particular way. This could say something along the lines of someone's expressing a need to you, and you will say, well, no, I can't believe you would bring something up like that. If you did things differently, what you're doing is causing a problem for me. The thing that we can do with that, the antidote, is to take responsibility. So this could look like accepting your partner's perspective. It doesn't necessarily mean to be accepting the partner's perspective as fact, but maybe acknowledging the way that they perceived thing. and apologize for anything that we think that we've actually done wrong. Now, when it comes to apologizing, I think a lot of us end up having a lot of problems with that. I know myself, it took me a long time in my adulthood to actually feel okay with giving out an apology, especially if I think that I didn't do anything wrong. And I think that a lot of us can really identify with this because we were growing up whenever we've hurt a sibling or we've gotten in trouble, we're told to apologize before we've even really understood what we've done wrong. And a lot of the time that with couples, I will try and help them learn about how to apologize in a way that actually is going to make sense, not just for themselves, but for the person they're apologizing to. For that in particular, I tend to lean on work by Chapman. So Chapman is another relationship therapist, goes back decades. Very, very pious. I will put it out there. If you Google any of this particular guy's stuff, especially on the apology language stuff, which I'm going to start to talk about. If you listen to any of his videos, it's all like, and in the Bible it says this, which is try to get past that. The information is worthwhile.
Cool. Okay.
This is the same therapist that came up with love languages for perspective. And I think a lot more people know the love languages than the apology languages one. When it comes down to it, he came up with 5 different ways to say, I'm sorry, very much like the love languages. But I am very firmly of the belief that you never focus on any one at the exclusion of all others.
Okay.
And for myself, to skip to the end, the best way my surefire way of recommending people to learn how to apologize is 4 steps that cover the majority of what Chapman was kind of aiming for with his 5 ones. Mm-hmm. So the first step is saying, I'm sorry. The second one is what you are sorry for. I'm sorry for being late. Something like that.
Yeah.
Step 3 is how your actions have impacted the other person. So it could be saying, I'm sorry for being late because I know that you really wanted to get there on time. I know this was very important to you. This has probably hurt you because it was important to you and it makes it seem like I don't care. So it's very much an opportunity to try and show that you can empathize with your partner and why they might be upset with you. Why are you apologizing in the first place? And the last one is the steps that you will take so that this won't happen again, so you won't hurt them again. That is generally how I would teach people to structure an apology, because it tends to mash most of the buttons on getting to the right point that the person would actually want to receive, to feel like you've actually done the work to say, I'm sorry.
Yeah. That was something that we explored with you as well, and you brought this up when we did some sessions with you. And since doing that with you, you realize when you're in a moment when an apology needs to be given, you realize how hard it really is sometimes. And then you think, why has it always been so hard to just say those words? It's like it's a pride thing, isn't it? It's an ego thing.
Well, this is what I was saying about maybe when we were growing up, we were told to apologize for things that we weren't quite ready or we didn't quite understand for. I don't think that I should be sorry, but I'm being told to say I'm sorry. And so a lot of people will actually say I'm sorry almost reflexively, even when they don't mean it, even when they don't care. And that's their way of getting past it. And I've definitely met people who have said words are cheap. It means nothing to me for you to say, I'm sorry. I need to see actions. I need you to understand that you've actually taken responsibility for this. So the I'm sorry, for some people, is really easy. They'll say it as much as breathing. But for other people, it's like, it is a point of pride. It becomes like as a child, I was made to feel like this. Yeah. And now you're telling me that you telling me that I have to apologize puts me into that, makes me feel like, wait, I'm not a child anymore. And so I will not apologize for something that I'm not ready for.
Yeah. And what we've experienced is obviously the process frees you up to communicate effectively. Yeah. And you get to a neutral state once again to be able to listen.
Yeah.
And that's really helped us in that process, that I start listening again instead of thinking whether I'm wrong or right.
Yeah.
It's more of getting to a place where we can listen to each other and then move forward.
Yeah.
And that's the goal.
Because
we want to move forward.
You can really get stuck in that place of then just both shutting down, not talking, if you don't move past this point, which would probably take us into the fourth point of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So
relationship apocalypse.
I'm packing my bags every time I hear that.
Yeah, well, I mean, the way you brought up some of the things just then was very much the criticism and defensiveness cycle. One person will try to criticize, or maybe unintentionally, and the other person will actually respond. And then you've just got two people bouncing back off each other.
Yeah.
And then, as you said, it ends up becoming a bit of a stalemate and shutting down. This is if you're staying in the same situation, though. The fourth one, stonewalling, is if one person chooses to actually leave the situation. So stonewalling is withdrawing to avoid conflict and basically to punish or to show disapproval through separation. So this is very much along the lines of like, I'm going to go for a walk. You're causing me to get upset. So it's kind of like punishing by saying I'm leaving. Now, this is not to be confused with people who are that are getting very overstimulated. They are very much getting overly upset, and they can't articulate themselves. It looks the same, but they are and they can be like responded in the same, but obviously they're very different. One person leaving the situation to convey disapproval versus one person being like, I actually cannot articulate myself when I'm this upset. And I've seen people like that. So one of the ways that we try to counteract this is the exact same way for either one of these, is to take a break. Now, when it comes to taking a break, you need to set a timer. You need to say, I'm just too overwhelmed at the moment. Give me 5 minutes and come back in 5 minutes. You can't say, give me 5 minutes and then just be gone and not talk about it for the rest of the night. The other person will still feel like the argument is ongoing, and then it will just feel completely unresolved. So this is obviously more of an issue for people with what's referred to as anxious attachment styles, which we haven't talked anything about attachment styles, but and as someone with an anxious attachment style very much feels that they need to cling closer to someone, their partner. And the more that someone pulls away, the more that they feel like they need to cling, capitulate, they say them that they're sorry when the other person is starting to withdraw. So in a situation with stonewallers where they are punishing the other person with distance, this obviously very much distresses someone with an anxious attachment style.
Yes.
Yeah. So you need to be able to say, I am going to come back to this. We are going to return to this. And you actually spend that 5 minutes, that 10 minutes. And look, if you get to the end of the 5 minutes and you're not ready, you can be like, can I have another 5 minutes?
Yeah.
And then you spend that time actually looking after yourself. It could be having a cup of tea. It could be getting a snack. I know that a lot of people get a bit angry. So they get a bit kind of like disgruntled, irritable when they're a bit hungry. So I usually recommend people to follow what's referred to as halts. If you're finding you've got some issues, you need to address H for hungry, A for angry,
right?
Yep.
L for lonely,
Love this.
T for tired, and S for stress. Be aware of these. I've actually had this in my own relationships when there starts to be a little bit of a breakdown. And it's like, well, why is this happening? This seems really disproportionate. We'll actually say to each other, what are your halts right now? And it's like, okay, I haven't eaten all day. Just give me 5 minutes.
Yeah.
We often experience that because we fast generally till midday.
Yeah.
And if we work out, I'm sometimes not great before 12.
Going all morning without food.
I know, yeah. And that's great. I actually really forget that.
Yeah.
I really do.
something else which pops to my mind was something that Brené Brown said that I heard actually. She was talking about relationships as well, and she was saying that something that her and her husband do is if they've both come home after a big day, they'll check in with each other and say, all right, where are you at? And she'll say, I'm at a 60, where are you? Mm-hmm. And Bevan might say, all right, well, I'm also at a 60, or I'm at a 20. If Bevan says I'm at a 20, I could say, all right, I got you. That's cool. I can pick up the slack. That's all good. But if we're both at the end of a big, long day and we both check in with each other and we're like, all right, we're both at a 20, we've just got to be like, okay, we're there for each other. We'll make it up with each other, and we both know that we're drained right now, but stick with each other.
Probably not the best time to make major decisions or to talk about stuff that's heavy.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Yeah, being able to actually communicate, and obviously communication. I think I said this to you guys in the very first session, that communication is very much the first thing that I work with clients. If I pick up that they just cannot talk to each other without causing any sorts of fights, you need to be able to structure and teach people to talk to each other in a way that doesn't make the other person feel attacked or that the meaning is being lost somewhere. And so that does become very important when things like, I'm not doing okay, I have a need, I'm not going to be able to pick up the slack, I'm not going to be able to feed the kids, I'm not going to be able to do the chores that we need to get done. As long as the other person understands that, there's not going to be that sense of constant, but you're never like this. You're always tired, or always pulling away. You're always dropping the slack. We as a species, and I think that most mammals have this, we want to feel connection. And as humans, we want to feel understood. And that's why fights tend to happen, that we want to say these things and we want the other person to actually understand, and we get very frustrated when we think that the other person doesn't quite get it. And that's why like the I statement stuff really comes in clutch, and where if you summarize and reflect, if the other person says to you, I'm not doing okay because of work, you summarize that, you reflect that, and you'd be like, you're really not doing okay because work is too much right now. You actually feel understood, and when you feel understood, your relationship becomes so much better.
Yeah, I reflect on the fact that you did bring up communication to be one, and when we're talking about intimacy and our sexuality, and you do work out very quickly is that, we often as a society concentrate on how we are sexually, how we're performing sexually, but we're not really sitting down and asking ourselves, but are we communicating effectively?
Communication is a massive part of sex anyway, right?
Yeah. I think if we all sort of understood that, it would be even better. But unpacking that's really important. It was really important for us, again, to come back to that, to realize that true intimacy for us is to have that beautiful connection, communication, and of course enhances your sexual experience, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
But we tend to forget that often.
Yeah. I think one of the big reasons why we started working with you as well, not only to help further our communication with each other, but sometimes we like to include other people in our relationship. Oh, wow. We're really talking about this now, aren't we? With the people that we know and love. Family listening. Hello, family. Yes, you're going to learn a lot about us, aren't you? Yep. Yeah. But anyway, that we wanted to do that. And the reason we came to see you is because we don't want to throw our relationship away. We don't want to put something on the line that is so special to us. We're so committed to each other and we love each other with all that we have. We don't want to take a stupid risk that could risk what we have. And we wanted to learn effective communication so that, and it's not like, this is not something that we chase all the time.
No.
I mean, there are apps. There are apps. There are so many apps, and there are so many people, and dings and dings and dings, and you can have notifications going all the time, and you can really get caught up in it, can't you?
You can. I think, for us, regardless of what the definition of our marriage is, it was really more important for us to understand that being truthful with each other and seen and vulnerable to each other, however that plays out for us. And coming to see you was that. Trying to work out some skills and tools to continually move through those conversations. And we obviously talk about boundaries. We talked about what things are needs we wanted in our own relationships.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just to help us obviously to communicate those things regardless of
Yeah.
how we actually defined our marriage, which was good.
A big thing that we did with you, Ash, was some more homework that you gave us, which was fantastic
More homework.
But you encouraged us to write a list and to go way above and beyond writing boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us about that.
Yeah, look, this is always look. For transparency for myself as well, I'm very much a polyamorous man and have been for about 10 years. For those who do not understand what that is the openness to having multiple loving and or sexual relationships simultaneously, as opposed to monogamous, which most versions of monogamy, which is concurrent relationships in a series. So when it comes to boundaries, it is a very important aspect of my dating life and my relationships that I very much try to communicate boundaries, and I want to understand the other person's boundaries. And I think that that's a very worthwhile thing in monogamous relationships or any kind of relationship. So a boundary is generally a rule that we try to provide for someone else to not cross because it will hurt us. Now, when it comes to these sort of boundaries, most monogamous relationships will have what's referred to as implicit boundaries. So monogamous relationships as a whole, they don't necessarily talk, hey, when we get together, we're in a relationship now, this is what this relationship is going to look like. It's just understood that we're in a relationship with each other now. That means that you can't talk to that girl, or that means that you can't touch that guy, all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
In non-monogamous relationships or ethically non-monogamous relationships, we have what's referred to as explicit boundaries, where we can actually talk very directly about what is something that will, what are the things that will be a problem for me? What will be a problem for you? I don't want to cross these boundaries. I want to be able to make sure that we are communicating that if I do end up getting like messages while you and I are together, that I'm not going to hurt you by messaging back and forth to that person to just try and make sure that they're okay. Mm-hmm. But for some other people, that would be a complete no-go. So communicating, the reason why I got the two of you to write out way, way more boundaries than you probably ever need is because it's way easier to reel back boundaries than it is to build them again after boundaries, like implicit boundaries have been, or believed boundaries have been crossed. So this is actually a process that my longest term partner and I went through when we were trying to figure out polyamory, is that we overcated. We came up with so many more rules than what we actually ever needed because we wanted to try and make each other feel safe, heard, and respected in the relationship. Mm-hmm. And so we wrote down a list of boundaries, of rules that would protect each other and not upset each other. And so we even found after 2 weeks going, you know what? About at least 5 of these rules are just they're a burden now. Let's reword them. Yeah. Let's take them away. Let's add some that actually assist us. But we didn't know that until we had actually gone through the list and found what worked for us. And so that's why I tried to get you guys to do the same thing, come up with this list and then revisit it over time to find out, hey, with a mutual agreement, how do we want to change this?
It was amazing when we started doing this work. It's amazing the level of depth that the trust between us became, because we had to have conversations about every scenario that we could possibly think of that in the past we hadn't had conversations about.
No, we had just walked into this in some ways in hope and cross your fingers, to be honest. You mentioned the word ethical, and that really does, I think that's something to explore. And if you could expand on that a little bit more, because, I think the word ethical is really important for us to all of a sudden to come to a realization about being ethical and what that actually meant.
Yeah, look, that's totally fair. for a bit of I guess just a very quick short covering of research around non-monogamous relationships. The reason why we attach ethical to it is because historically research on relationships that happen outside of a monogamous sort of dynamic have always been considered cheating, infidelity, things like that. And it wasn't actually until ridiculously recently, so I'm talking like 2012 to 2015, did research actually start to think, wait, there are people having relationships simultaneously, and it's not infidelity. Has most of our research on cheating and infidelity potentially been skewed because the researchers thought that that was the same thing? The short answer is yes. A lot of it was actually portraying, skewing results and data because the researchers had their own biases. And I'm not saying that ethical non-monogamous researchers have their own biases, but by adding the actual extra words and defining it more specifically, we end up becoming a little bit more aware of what's happening. So ethical non-monogamy is the concept of being open to pretty much anything outside of the monogamous paradigm. So just non-monogamy would imply infidelity or cheating. But ethical non-monogamy is more of an umbrella term. So it can encapsulate polyamory, can also encapsulate swingers, open relationships, what's referred to as relationship anarchists, which are just flat out like, we don't want to be labeled. We're just going to do whatever it is without the intention of hurting anyone. But it is under the ethical non-monogamous label in the sense that ethics is a set of rules we try to follow for the betterment of everyone involved. I mean, ethics is a broad term. It doesn't just apply to relationships. It applies to everything. But it is a word that is meant to imply beneficence, the idea of trying to do good. And so when it comes to these ethical non-monogamous relationships, it is about trying to do things in a very transparent, honest, communicative way so that everyone knows what's going on. That's not to say that all relationships under the ethical non-monogamous banner follow that. Some people might follow what's referred to as the don't ask, don't tell paradigm. I personally do not support that because it just tends to lead to problems, but it does exist. And for some people, they prefer that.
Yeah. And for us, it was never on the table.
Yeah.
No.
I just appreciate so much how much more we got to know each other, how much more we got to know ourselves, how much more I discovered about myself and what I would be comfortable with and what my boundaries would be, purely based on the homework we did with you and the communication that you and I had from that.
Yeah. And it was sort of nice to know that, I mean, we're older. Oh, well, I'm older, but in my head, I've had a lot of this in my head for a long, long time, and different experiences, religious background. My faith journey has challenged me in that respect about monogamy and where that traditional values live. But to be free to that, to have the freedom to have the conversation without the fear of rejection, in a safe space, and sitting down with the person I absolutely adore and love is empowering and has been empowering.
Yeah.
Yeah. Regardless of whether you act on that or not, to have all what's in here out here and not to be thrown back at you or scoffed at you or shamed.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And for us, it's being able to share that. And this is why we're doing this, is to be really open with everyone, to share the joy that we found in that struggle of letting go of our, our perceived ideas of how the relationship should be, and being really honest with each other and showing how much joy that's come out of that.
Yeah. I mean, we're raised to believe that you grow up, for you and I, find a woman.
I did that first.
You get married, you have kids, you settle down. If you cheat, you're going to hell.
You're going to hell.
I mean, there's so much
and you sit
undoing
there,
that
you can't look at anyone, and Yeah, it's hard because I don't know if you do this when you see other relationships around you, Ash, and you just wish that people could have better conversations with each other to be freer. Like often we see that
look,
yeah.
There's been plenty of times when I've been like, oh, this situation would just be fixed if they could be polyamorous or something like that. But then I kind of remind myself, it's like, well, I wouldn't want to inflict those people on the polyamorous community. And it does actually matter why you want this in the first place. For some people, it's just about the excitement of events, about trying to get out there and live your, I believe you refer to us as animals, your animalistic urges.
Yes.
Some of it is about that. Some of it is about, I guess, increased companionship, not just for getting other partners, but it's also about improves your own, like the relationship that you started with. So, for example, there is research out there that says that people in polyamorous relationships, or that they go out and have relationships separately, it actually can improve the original relationship. And I think that that's really something to be aware of, because we do very much, a lot of Western culture, and it's also obviously going to a lot of other cultures as well, we have the belief that, no, unless you're happy with one person, then you're a failure as an individual, which obviously causes a lot of issues when you're talking about divorcees or people who have been widowed or something like that.
Yeah,
there is no one for you, and we are a very much a species that requires connection with people, not just one person. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village for a person to feel like a person.
Yeah,
I think that. So I actually, when I was finishing up my undergrad, I did an honours thesis, and I actually did it on consensual non-monogamous relationships for people 35 and younger. And I found that it wasn't necessarily the really young people that were super into this. This is like the belief is that teenagers and early 20s, they're definitely the ones that are going to be like transgressing against the norms and wanting to be polyamorous, wanting to be non-monogamous. Actually, no. It was completely the opposite, is that those age brackets, they're still very much like stuck in that indoctrinated cultural aspect of, well, no, monogamy is the right thing. You need to find that one. And a lot of other research supports this, that as people get older, they kind of go, well, this isn't necessarily about society anymore. What society wants for me. What do I want for me? How can I be happy in my life? And that's why we end up finding that people from 30s and onwards, they will actually be doing the things that maybe the younger they couldn't really do, because they were still trying to figure out their place in the world. And for example, divorcees or similar sort of individuals that aren't in a relationship, they'll actually not want to get back in a relationship that is the monogamous, that is, let's move in together and be on what's referred to the relationship escalator. If this is a thing that you've heard of, basically you get in a relationship and it just keeps going the trajectory of let's get together, let's move in together, get married, have kids, all that sort of stuff. You can't get off an escalator. You basically just have to keep going. A lot of research, even when it doesn't explore non-monogamy, will actually show that people might want to be able to design their life and relationship maybe separately. I live over here, you stay over there, and we can just kind of enjoy our own spaces. Or people having separate bedrooms, even though they're in a committed relationship together. It's very interesting. I think that these days we are very much more open to exploring different dynamics, whereas I think that our parents and our parents' parents are very much attached to pretty much an enforced ideal, because when it comes down to it, monogamy is a very recent invention. If we're talking homework, I've got a book for everyone.
Oh, here it comes. I love it.
One of the books that actually got me really sort of thinking is one called Sex at Dawn So Sex at Dawn is it's kind of like an anthropological book on the analysis of humans as a species, and how we relate to sex and relationships in regards to other species, in regards to other cultures and things like that. It was written by Christopher Ryan and, I'm going to botch this, it's a Spanish name, Cacilda Jetha, I think is how it's pronounced. But together they wrote a book that analyzed these different sort of aspects, and so much knowledge came out of that. And to the point where it's very much in case, we are not a monogamous species. We were never intended for a nuclear family where it's one house, two parents, a bunch of kids that no one is equipped as parents to be able to look after. We just don't have the resources. We were meant to be a collective where everybody helped out each other.
Yeah.
It's not what we really find ourselves in, though.
I love that.
Which we do see in nature in examples everywhere right now.
Looking after the pride.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
We always have a bit of a joke if things go pear-shaped down in Tasmania that we're just going to all invite our friends on our block of land and we're having wonderful community and we're just going to look after each other's kids and us.
We'll just have a commune.
We'll just have a commune.
Sounds good, doesn't it?
Sounds great to me. Well, we've all got some homework to read a good book.
Yeah.
I love that.
Ash, I feel like we could... Well, I feel like we could just keep going on. We really could keep going and just explore dynamics of relationships in general, different kinds of relationships, which would be really interesting. And maybe we could do another
we could get you back.
More specific podcasts with you in future.
Yeah.
But what are maybe some key things that people could take away right now if they wanted to maybe enhance the communication in their relationship, get to know not only each other better, but themselves better?
Well, I mean, getting to know each other deeper is always an interesting thing. But I mean, first we need to understand ourselves. I think that as a species, as a culture, we tend to be obsessed with the codependency of a pair bonding. It's like, well, now that we're together, we are the same person. And codependency historically is not very good for a relationship. But if you start to understand yourself, your needs, and remember that you are an individual and you have your own wants and things that you want to do, then that can actually really help you connect with your other partner, even if you don't have the similar interests, because you can actually be like, what did you do today? Look, I know that this isn't the particular thing that you liked, but I got really excited and interested and really enjoyed this particular thing. And just sharing the interest, the excitement of something that you enjoy can actually be a really good way to connect with your partner. As far as communication goes, listen. I think that listening is something that's really hard. So I do reinforce the summarizing and reflecting, treating each other with respect. I think that respect is something that a lot of people know in word only, that they don't actually kind of, like, they demand respect, but they don't earn respect. Mm-hmm. Equity in a relationship, you want to make sure that the relationship is beneficial and is equal for both parts or more. Trust, you want to make sure that you are working on trust with each other. If you don't feel like you trust your partner, maybe have a think and look at that. Transparency. I'm not saying that you need to give each other your phone passwords, but I think being able to tell each other what's going on in your life is incredibly important. So I have a shared Google Calendar, which most polyamorous people do, with both of my partners. So they can see what I'm getting up to. I can see what they're getting up to. There's a level of transparency there.
Fantastic. Makes it easier to book things in too, right?
It does. It does.
Win-win for everyone.
Yeah. Look, a healthy sexual relationship is something to work on. I know, like, honestly, I've been spending the last hour talking and I've barely even talked about sex, but a healthy sexual relationship, whatever that looks like to the couple, it will vary. Some people don't want sex. Some people are asexual, and that is okay. When there's mismatched libido, that is obviously a very difficult thing, and I do get a lot of clients like that. Another really good thing for couples to work on is the ability to be able to express anger and upset in a way that does not scare or attack the other partner. I think that a lot of people will think that by leading with their emotions, I'm just a very fiery person and you've upset me. Explosively anger, that obviously causes the other person to withdraw or to be hurt or to be scared and not sure how safe this relationship is. But being able to assertively express, you've upset me. Can we fix something about this? Can we do it so this doesn't happen again? That is a very valuable thing. Moving on from that, vulnerability. I think that it's actually really worthwhile to actually feel safe enough with someone that you can express some deep-seated fears or to feel that the other person could hurt you, but they're not going to, because you are in that safe, committed relationship.
Yeah.
Which commitment is the next point. You want to be committed. And you want to express forgiveness and compassion towards each other. And you want to be affectionate. And you want to actually like your partner. A lot of people talk about love. I get clients that come to me and they're like, oh, I love them, but I do not like them. And I'm like, well, that's something to work on.
Yeah.
That's a very compressed version of what I think people should really.
They're amazing takeaways. They really are.
Yeah. I think just being able to communicate, like there's so much shame, particularly around sex and talking about sex, maybe some of your deep fetishes, desires and things that you're like, oh, if I express this part of myself, my partner might leave me or something. If you love
look, we can make an entire podcast episode.
I think we might. I think we might.
We'll have to.
We'll have to. The next one. We haven't even talked about masturbation yet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You could do a whole few hours of masturbation.
Could I?
Yeah, and you could probably even do that one by yourself.
I'm older than both of you. I've been masturbating for much longer.
Now, Ash,
That's
what was
right.
that book that you recommended again?
Yes, please.
Sex at Dawn. And I've got a library of stuff to recommend from today's Sex at Dawn. There's also the Gottman and Chapman books that talk about the 4 horsemen and love languages and apology languages.
Fantastic.
You can Google those things and you will find a lot of information about them.
Yeah, on YouTube there are some really good videos about the 4 horsemen of the relationship apocalypse, which we've watched a few times. Really cool.
Yep.
We have read some books. The Velvet Rage, particularly and specifically if you are a gay man.
Yes.
The Velvet Rage talks about what gay men go through. We've read The
Ethical Slut.
The Ethical Slut.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love that book.
Good book as well.
And that one's actually been revised over the years. So that one's probably about 30 years old now, and they've revised it every couple of years.
Fantastic.
Which is awesome.
And also the word slut. We need to own that word. It's not a word that should be shamed.
No, it's not.
I embrace my inner slut.
Especially with the ethical part.
Absolutely.
We'd love it.
Ash, now, Ash, if...
Obviously, what people can do is see Ash.
Yeah, absolutely. How can people get in touch with you, Ash, and find more information about you?
Yeah, sure. So if you Google sex life therapy or even most sex therapy things, you'll generally come up with the clinic that I work at. And I have a profile on there along with some other really wonderful therapists. Googling that sex therapy with my name, Ashley Macklin, you'll definitely get some form of contact with me.
Right.
But I will say that I'm not going to be the best therapist for everyone. Therapeutic rapport matters more than any skill. If you don't feel that I'm the right fit for you, I would be happy to forward you on to someone else that I do think would be the right fit.
Beautiful for you to say
fantastic.
that.
Well, again, I feel like we could just keep talking, but we should probably wrap this up.
We should wrap it up.
People are probably trying to get to work or get home. We've been going for about an hour. Ashley Macklin, we really appreciate having a chat with you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
No worries. Thanks very much, gents, for having me.
Look, thank you so much, and thanks for being a part of our lives and helping us on our journey also, and will continually help us on our journey. Thanks, mate.
No, that sounds great.
Thanks for joining us on Two Gay Peas in a Podcast. Show us some love, give us a thumbs up, and hit that subscribe button for future episodes.